They say that silence is golden, a sanctuary for the weary mind. But in my line of work, you learn that this is the greatest lie ever told. Silence is heavy, possessing a physical weight that presses against your eardrums, desperate to be filled. My name is Elias, and I am an archival audio engineer living in a cabin miles from the nearest town, deep within a forest that swallows sound. My profession is that of a resurrectionist. I take the damaged, degraded, and forgotten reels of magnetic tape sent to me by estates or museums, and I scrub away the static, the hiss, and the decay of time until the voices of the dead speak clearly again. It is usually mundane work, restoring old court depositions or forgotten garage band demos. But the isolation of the woods does strange things to a man's perception of reality. On a stormy Tuesday night, while the rain hammered against my roof like handfuls of gravel, a package arrived with no return address. It was a simple brown cardboard box, taped shut with excessive layers of duct tape, containing a single 7-inch reel of 1/4-inch magnetic tape, labeled only with a typewriter's fading ink, Session 9, The Empty Room, 1974. As soon as I cracked the seal, the room was filled with the pungent, sour smell of vinegar, the scent of acetate film degrading, the smell of a memory rotting from the inside out. My instinct screamed at me to leave it alone, to let the dead stay buried in their static. But curiosity is a fatal flaw in my trade. I cleaned the heads of my machine with isopropyl alcohol, mounted the decaying reel, and pressed play, asterisk at first. There was only a wall of white noise, but it wasn't a clean, consistent static of a blank tape. This was textured and wet, sounding uncomfortably like rain falling on piles of dead, sodden leaves. I watched the VOOM meters on my console, the red needles dancing violently into the danger zone, spiking in a rhythmic pattern that my ears couldn't yet detect, suggesting the machine was picking up a frequency below the threshold of human hearing. I began the restoration process, engaging high-pass filters and digital scrubbers to strip away the layers of hiss. It is a surgical procedure, delicate and precise. Take away too much noise, and the voice sounds robotic. Take away too little, and it remains buried. As the digital algorithms did their work, that wet background noise clarified into a sound that made my skin crawl. Breathing. It was slow, ragged, and wet, recorded right up against the microphone diaphragm. The sound of someone waiting in the dark with a patience that felt predatory. This continued for 12 agonizing minutes, just a wet rasp of inhalation and exhalation, until the breathing stopped abruptly, replaced by 3 distinct, hollow knocks. Thud, thud, thud. They sounded like knuckles rapping on heavy oak. I paused the tape to log the timestamp, my hand hovering over the notebook, when the sound was answered from the heavy, bolted door of my own cabin. 3 identical knocks echoed through the room. Thud, thud, thud. Asterisk, I froze, my breath catching in my throat as I stared at the door. I was miles from civilization, surrounded by a storm, and the door was deadbolted from the inside. I called out, my voice cracking in the damp air, but only the wind answered. Desperate to rationalize the terror, I convinced myself it was a tree branch hitting the siding. A coincidence born of a tired mind and an overactive imagination. I put my headphones back on, turning the volume up to drown out the silence of the woods, and resumed the tape. Immediately, the audio landscape shifted. The room tone on the recording changed from a small, enclosed space to something vast and cavernous, like a cathedral or a deep cave. A voice finally cut through the magnetic decay, distorted and buried, whispering. It seized the glass. I isolated the frequency, boosting the mid-range, and the voice spoke again, this time with terrifying clarity, as if the speaker were standing directly behind my chair. He is listening now, the voice rasped. The man in the chair, the man with the headphones. The temperature in my cabin plummeted instantly. my breath misting in the air before the monitors. The voice continued, faster now, urgent and mocking. Don't turn around, Elias. Don't look at the window. Asterisk panic, cold and sharp, pierced my chest. The tape was from 1974, recorded 20 years before I was born, yet it knew my name. It knew where I was sitting. My studio has one window directly behind my desk, which at night turns into a black mirror reflecting the room. The voice on the tape wasn't just a recording. It was a live feed from a different time. I am not on the tape. Elias, the voice boomed, vibrating the very walls of the cabin, bypassing my headphones entirely. I am in the silence. You cleaned the noise. You cleared the path. You invited me in. The overhead light bulb exploded in a shower of sparks and glass, plunging the room into darkness save for the dancing red LEDs of the console and the pale, ghostly glow of the computer monitor. In the black reflection of the monitor, behind my own terrified face, I saw a face at the window. It was pale, long, and featureless, save for a mouth stretched into an impossible smile and eyes that reflected the red lights of my equipment. Asterisk, I scrambled backward, knocking my chair over, and crawled under the desk as the tape machine spun wildly out of control. The reel unspooled, sending ribbons of black magnetic tape flying into the air like a spider web, defying gravity. But the horror was no longer confined to the recording. I heard the sound of the back door, the one I had locked, creaking open. Then came the footsteps. Slap, slap, slap. Wet, bare feet walking on the wooden floorboards. Moving closer to the desk, the entity was inside. I realized then the true nature of my work. By cleaning the audio, by removing the static, I hadn't just restored a sound, I had removed the barrier between here and there. I grabbed a backup microphone, intending to scream, to create a feedback loop that might disrupt the entity's frequency. But as I opened my mouth, the air around me smelled of vinegar and rot. The wet footsteps stopped right beside the desk. A cold hand touched my ankle in the dark, and the last thing I heard was my own voice, echoing back to me not from my throat, but from the darkness above, saying, "You cannot close the door once you have scrubbed the threshold." Asterisk months later, on a bright, crisp November morning, a new archivist sat in a sterile, sunlit office in the city. On his desk sat a plastic evidence bag containing a single, slightly damaged reel of tape recovered from the cabin of Elias Thorne, who had been found dead of heart failure, his face frozen in a rictus of terror. The authorities wanted to know if the tape held any clues to his final moments. The new archivist, a young man eager to prove his skills, mounted the reel. "It's a mess," he muttered, listening to the heavy static, "but there's a voice underneath. I can clean this up." He engaged the digital noise reduction filters, scrubbing away the protective layer of hiss. For a moment, a tiny, distorted voice broke through Elias's voice, screaming from the past. "Don't press play." The archivist frowned, mistaking the garbled audio for "don't delay," and continued his work, turning the knob to clear the remaining static. Suddenly, the speakers went silent, and the room temperature dropped. From the speakers came the sound of wet, ragged breathing, and then, from the sturdy door of the archivist's own office, came 3 distinct, hollow knocks. Thud, thud, thud. The cycle had begun again.